Amen. I'm already a mess. Let's go. This morning, before we get into the message, as I was preparing, we've been fasting, not eating food, and praying for you guys, praying for myself. I felt like the Lord actually, when I started putting the message together, I felt like He gave me a couple prophetic words for us that I wanted to share before I jump in the message. I don't know how the fast has been going for y'all, but it's been a challenge, a challenging one for me. I feel like there's just so much opposition, which I'm okay with. This is the Christian life. But for every fast I feel is different, and I don't sense this all the time. So I do feel like there is a little bit more pushback, which I believe is a good thing. Because if we're doing nothing, the devil doesn't care. Friends, I don't know if you know this, but we're actually in a war. Like there's a spiritual battle. If the Lord lifted the veil, you'd see angels in this place. And you would see with your spiritual eyes angels pushing back demons and spiritual forces so that you could hear the word this morning. Like this is the reality of the Christian life. It's so much more than morals and principles and how to be good and things, and they're good things. If you're a non-believer and you follow the Bible, I believe your life will be blessed. I truly do. But as a believer, as a Christian, we are now spiritual beings. And we live in a spiritual world. And we are, my friends, in a war. And as we push back against darkness, trust me, there is opposition. The devil does not sit idly by and twiddle his thumbs like, yep, go for more of the Lord, man. That's good for you guys. Start changing the atmosphere around this place in Hawaii Kai, start doing things even physically at Kaiser High School. Like, the devil's not sitting by and going like, yeah, good, I like this church. Yeah, he's not doing that. And so a lot of times, even as fasting is a physical thing, we stop eating food, but in the spiritual realm, there's huge implications. See, there's battle for souls, there's battle for marriages, there's battle for your children. There's battle for healings. For some of us, this is life and death. Like there is things in the balance that we don't understand. And if the Lord would lift the veil and allow you to see, I think we would be surprised. And so as I was praying for us, I felt like I was in prayer and the Lord started giving me these pictures, prophetic pictures. I just say prophetic because I feel like they're from Him. In the spirit, and then I just started seeing these pictures, and what I saw the Lord mobilizing and positioning us on land, in the sea, and for the air. I started seeing these pictures of battleships and aircraft carriers, like whole fleets of them, being positioned in different parts of the ocean, and troops and tanks being mobilized and placed in strategic positions. And I felt like the Lord said that this is part of my strategy. I was like, okay. So I asked the Lord, so what's the strategy? Like, why all the movement? Why this military pictures and stuff like that? What's the strategy for this war? And this is truly what I believe. Like the Lord said, He's like, it's not necessary for you to know the strategy right now. But what's more important and our main concern should be preparation. Like I said, fasting food is a physical act, but there is tremendous spiritual implications, things that happen in the spirit as we deny our flesh food. And so if you're fasting, then I would encourage you to ask the Lord, what is He preparing you for? I think oftentimes, like these fasts twice a year that we do, they do propel us and launch us into other seasons. As a church, but as you, as individuals, as a family, your own family unit, I truly believe the Lord has something for you on the other side. Like it happens a lot if you read the Bible. There's fasting that happens, intercession that happens, prayer that happens, and then something happens. The Lord does something. And so if you're fasting, I would encourage you to ask the Lord. Begin to ask, what are these things? And if you're not fasting, we have one week left. Join us. The Lord is preparing us for something. He's preparing you specifically for something and your family for something. So this morning, as we continue our series in the book of Matthew, before we do jump in, I just wanted to restate the purpose of the series, and it's going to lead me to my second word I feel like the Lord gave me. The reason why we're going through the book of Matthew for the next 2 years or however long this takes, we don't know, right? We're just going through it. Really, you can name the series Jesus. I think it would be a good title too. We're just trying to study Jesus, learn about Jesus, get his heart, capture his mind, see what he does. And so however long it takes us to get through this series, it's not just to read about cool stories and miracles and healings that Jesus did. It's not even necessarily hear all the great teachings, and the Sermon of the Mount is one of the greatest teachings, if not the greatest teaching in the Bible. And it's not just to hear these things just so that we can apply biblical principles in our lives. Our prayer is that you would encounter the God-man. You probably heard me say this before, but from Genesis to Revelation, the whole Bible is about Jesus. There's a saying that says that the Old Testament is the gospel concealed, the New Testament is the gospel revealed. But either way, it's the gospel, and it's about Jesus, the whole thing. And so if we go through this series and we read all the good things and this unreal, just mind-blowing things that Jesus did, but we miss the man, then we're going to miss it. Then we're going to miss it. We just don't want to know things about Jesus. We have to know him. So you see, you can even memorize all the stories in here. You can memorize the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible. You can memorize the prophets, see all the prophecies that were fulfilled like the Pharisees did. And this is what Jesus tells the religious leaders in John 5. He says, you search these scriptures because you think that in them you have eternal life. But he says this, but it is they that speak and bear witness about me. Yet, he says this, you refuse to come to me. So you can read the Bible. These guys, they memorize Torah. They memorize the first 5 books of the Bible and the prophets, a lot of them. And they knew the prophecies. They knew the burning bush. They knew the Red Sea parted. They knew the story of creation, how God spoke everything into being miraculously. Yet they missed the man who was standing right in front of them. And we cannot miss the man. We cannot miss the man this morning. And here's the second prophetic word. I feel like some of you this morning know you need help. And you know that you need a Savior. And you come to church and it feels good. And you know why? Because when his people gather together, the scripture is clear as a promise that when we gather together in his name, that he is here even in the midst of us. And so it feels good because you know why? His presence is here. And whatever is oppressing you, the demons you have, they got to stay at the door. They're not allowed in here. You know what I'm saying? And so you come in here and you feel good. But when you go home and you're alone, you're left wanting. You're like, there's still, I heard the word, I heard the Bible, but you didn't meet the man. And so you go home by yourself and you sit by yourself and you are left wanting. Maybe you've come to church for years, or you just started coming and you're trying to learn so that you can be a good person and how to apply godly principles in your life. In other words, you search the scriptures so that you can be free. But you've been struggling with the same sin, the same addiction, and the same depression for years, and you feel like this thing owns me. I cannot be free. I go to church, I hear the Bible, I sing the songs, but still when you're home alone, you're left wanting. You're like, I want to be free, but this thing won't let me go. And this is what Jesus calls being a slave to sin. You see, the religious leaders knew the scriptures. They had it memorized, like I said. They knew the principles, they knew the law, and they even knew all the miracles and all this stuff that Jesus did, all of creation. Again, the deliverance of the Jewish people from Egypt. But he says, you still refuse to come to me that you may have life. You see, church won't save you. A prayer is not going to save you. The Bible is not going to save you. Only Jesus can save you. He's the only one who can save you and set you free. So today is the day of salvation. Don't refuse to come to Jesus this morning. So I don't know if any of those words make sense to any of you, but if it does, you can meet him this morning. And I believe the word in the scripture as we go through is definitely of one for preparation. So we're continuing in Matthew, and we're in verses 18 through 22. Let's just read this real quick, shall we? Now when Jesus saw a crowd around him, he gave orders to go over to the other side, and a scribe came up to him and said, "Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go." And Jesus said to him, "Foxes have holes, and birds of the air have nests." Sorry, I'm trying to grab a Kleenex. "But the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head." Another of his disciples said to him, "Lord, let me first go and bury my father." And Jesus said to him, "Follow me, and leave the dead to bury their own dead." That's Matthew 18 to 22. Guys, I have to be honest. I read the words of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, and I read the Bible and I read the Gospels, and I literally laugh out loud sometimes to myself. Like I sit at home and I read the Gospels. I try and get in the Gospels every morning. I want to read about Jesus every morning. And I read this guy's words, and I literally sit in my living room or in my bed, whatever it is, and I literally laugh out loud. I'm like, what? You said what? He is absolutely by far the most non-politically correct person there ever was. He makes Donald Trump look like a Boy Scout, this guy does. Like, this is Jesus, I'm telling you. This guy, he does not care. He does not pull one punch. You know, I read the words of Jesus, and I think Jesus responds like he has Asperger's. Like, this guy just says whatever he wants, whatever comes to the top of his mind. He's like, this guy is like, "I want to follow you." He's like, "Bro, I don't even have a place to sleep. You want to follow me?" You know, this guy, this is how Jesus talks. And he does it on purpose. You know, I was a sales manager at Infinity, is a car brand. It's like the high end of Nissan, and for many years. And if Jesus was one of my salespeople, he would have been the worst salesperson in the world and the worst guy to manage. I know. I can imagine giving Jesus called the first pencil. So, you know, when you guys buy a car, don't ever accept the first pencil, by the way. The first pencil is the paper they bring out with the price, you know, the term, your interest rate, down payment, right? Your payment, monthly payment if you're financing. And this is what we call the first pencil. And the salesperson brings it out, and he's like, "Okay, this is the terms, this is the price of the car, this is your payment, etc., your interest rate." And I can imagine Jesus bringing out the first pencil, and the customer starts haggling over price. And I'm convinced this is what Jesus would do. He'd be like, "You know what? You can't afford this car, bro. You should buy a Kia." I'm convinced this is what Jesus would do. Like, "Here's the pencil, sir. Hey, we got all the lines. Great news, the car's still available. You can still purchase it today." And haggle, and Jesus would be like, "You know what? You can't afford this car, bro. Kia's across the street. That's your budget." These are the things we say in the sales office, by the way. "Hey, this guy can't afford this car. He should buy a Kia." We're like, "Calm down, bro. We're selling this car." The salespeople, they get too smart for their own good. This is just what happens. And Jesus would kick him out of the store, and then he would come back to the sales office and be like, "What happened to the customer? Where's the customer? You don't walk anybody, bro." And he'd be like, "Yeah, they didn't see the value in our car. They didn't want to pay the price, so I launched them. I kicked them out. They couldn't see it. They didn't see the value. You know what I mean? Jesus, he don't play. He just don't play. And we are so opposite in our current church and discipleship, in this current church and discipleship age. Jesus had people asking him to follow him and to be his disciple, but he would make it so difficult for them to do so. I can't remember a time as I read the scriptures when he actually turned someone away. But oftentimes they would end up leaving themselves just by Jesus explaining what the cost, what it means to follow him. You guys remember the rich and young ruler? He's like, I want to follow you, Jesus. You're the man. And it's funny that Jesus does all these miracles, right? He shows his power. And as soon as he shows his power, then these guys come and say, hey, you know what? We want to follow you. And so Jesus asks questions, and he presents the cost to expose the heart. And he says, I think these guys want to follow me because they want to be able to do what I do. Like they want to do the healings. They want gather the crowds. They want people to follow me. And so look at what the first guy says. He says, I'll follow you wherever you go, Jesus. And Jesus' response is, I don't even have a home. I don't even have a place to sleep every night. You sure you want to follow me? Again, the great salesman that he is. Then the second guy says the same thing. I want to follow you too. I want to be your disciple too. But my dad just died. I just got to go make some arrangements so that I can bury him, that we can have a funeral. And you got to imagine, this guy's father literally just died. So this guy is grieving. I'm sure he's sad. His father just passed away. He just lost his dad. And Jesus is like, you know what? Don't worry about your dead father. Let him bury himself. Like, this is what Jesus is saying. Do you hear the words coming? Like, you're like, I want to take those back. Like, Jesus is saying them, but I want to grab one. Like, no, don't say that. Like, don't worry about your dead dad. Let him bury himself. You can follow me if you want to follow me. I'm like, where's the compassion? Now, I don't believe that having a roof over our head and having a bed to sleep in and having funerals are bad things. I don't believe that this is what Jesus is saying. But what I do believe he is saying is that the cost to follow him is very high. And this is what it also means, that it doesn't make a lot of worldly sense to follow him. Like, it doesn't make sense. You can't even see him right now. And so it's like, it doesn't make sense. Like, he's saying, don't bury your dad, let him bury himself. This doesn't make sense. And I think most of us cringe when we read some of Jesus' statements and how offensive they seem. And the reason why we do this, and this is super important, is because our cultural Christianity and what we deem effective for evangelism, for church growth and discipleship, it greatly differs from what Jesus' ideas were and are. Right now, if you're a newcomer, and we don't spam you, I don't think. I never did the thing, but a lot of church, 670-3377, is that the number? I memorize it. I hear it every week. But I know a lot of churches have all these protocols in place. Oh, new guy came. We got to send them 2 texts, 3 emails, and you got to leave 4 voice messages in a matter of 3 days, or they're not going to come back. Like, this is the protocol for today's day and age. This is the culture we live in. And it's what we do in business. If a new guy comes on when I used to be in the car business, and we put him in the CRM, there's a protocol. You're sending them email, thank you text, blah, blah, blah. You're going to leave a message the next. This is the cultural. This is what we do in culture. And I'm not even saying that these are necessarily bad things per se. But when I read the Bible, Jesus seemed to be the complete opposite. And I don't think we can dismiss this as, oh, it's just a cultural thing. It's just Jesus' time. No. The way Jesus was and the message he preached is literally for us today. It wasn't written to us, but it's written for us. And never mind that he's the same yesterday, today, and forever. We just covered a couple months ago in Matthew 7 13 to 14, and this is what Jesus says. He says, enter by the narrow gate. So this is a small gate. For this, the gate is wide, and the way is easy that leads to destruction. So it's wide and it's easy. Jesus was narrow and he made it hard. This is what he did. He wanted true disciples. He knew the hearts of men and the fickleness of how we are. And so he says, for the gate is wide and the way is easy that leads to destruction. And those who enter by it are many. Not little bit, many. Many people go for easy and wide. Many people. Few, he says. For the gate is narrow and the way is hard that leads to life. And those who find this one are few. Many and few is what he said. This is real. It's not my words. Thank God. This is Jesus' words. I've been doing ministry for a little while now. Probably since my 20s, early 20s. I'm in my early 50s now. And the statements, I was doing this thing, and I was like, I felt like all these things started coming to me. And these statements I'm going to tell you right now, truthfully, are all things I've heard over the years. Because I've been in leadership, church leadership, since like my early 20s. And I personally heard some of these things, all of these things really, over the years. I've heard this. Oh, you guys changed your service time? Bro, I can't come to that church. I can't come to that service. I can't come to your church anymore because you changed your service time. Your church doesn't have air conditioning? I heard this. I can't come to your church. Your church doesn't have air conditioning. Like, I'm not making these up. The music is too loud. The music is too soft. Believe it or not, I've heard that. I've had a disagreement with so-and-so, so you know what, they go to your church, I'm not coming to your church anymore. The sermon is too long. The sermon is too short. You use too much script. I've heard you use too much scripture. You didn't tell enough stories. Forgive me for reading the Bible in the sermon. This is mind-blowing. You know, I don't agree with the pastor's politics. Can't come to your church anymore. The Apostle Paul addresses these things in the Bible. He addresses all of these things. He says, I wish I could address you as mature, but you're not. You still got to drink milk. I just can imagine Jesus hearing this, and I truly believe it just grieves him. You see, our culture has created consumers, and unfortunately, this has bled into the church in a lot of ways. Like, we have created a consumer culture in the church. And I can just imagine Jesus thinking, what happened to the cost of following me? I told a guy to go, don't worry about his dead dad. Let him bury himself. Like, that is a cost, my friends. I think what we've done is we've tried to remove as much of the cost of following Jesus as possible so that we could make following Jesus more comfortable. And it would, to us, it would make it seem that the gospel in that case would be more palatable. But in doing so, what we have done is we've actually removed the power of the gospel. You know, in the context of the end times, which I feel like the Lord has called me to study, and so I've spent some years studying eschatology, which is the study of last things, or the end times. And I believe we're in these times. But look at what Jesus says in Matthew 24, verses 9 through 14. He says, then they will deliver you up to tribulation and put you to death. And you'll be hated by all nations for my name's sake. And then many will fall away and betray one another and hate one another. And many false prophets will arise and lead many astray. And because lawlessness will be increased, the love of many will grow cold. But the one who endures to the end will be saved. And look at verse 14. He says, and this gospel of the kingdom will be proclaimed throughout the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. This is Jesus' idea of the gospel. This is the gospel of the kingdom. He says, you will be killed, you will be persecuted, you'll be hated for my name's sake. This is the context of what Jesus is saying. And he's saying, this is the real gospel. This is the gospel of the kingdom. This is the gospel I preach to you. And before I come back, this true gospel is going to spread to the ends of the earth. And then I'm going to come back, is what he said. Jesus is very specific. He says, this gospel of the kingdom. This is the gospel of the kingdom. That there is trouble, there's a cost, there's tribulation. We know that he's with us in these things. We know that. He is with us. He is for us. If he's for us, who can be against us? We know the things. But the whole gospel is this, that there's a cost and that there is trouble coming and that you and I may have to live through it. I believe we are. That's my personal eschatology. And beloved, I seriously wrestle with these things. Because why I do? Because one day I will stand before Jesus alone and I will have to give an account for my life. And as a leader and even a teacher right now of his word, I'm held accountable. That's what James says in 3:1. Don't presume to be one. Don't presume to be a pastor. You have stricter judgment on you. Don't do it. And I wrestle with this because, beloved, honestly, I will stand before the Lord one day. I'm not worried about standing in front of you right now. I'm not nervous. This doesn't move me. But one day I will stand before the Lord and I will give an account for what I said, what I didn't say, what I did, and what I didn't do. And as far as I'm concerned, if you're here in this place, I'm part of the leadership team, you're my responsibility as well. And I love you. And I love you. And I want you to, what he says, endure to the end. But you have to know what the cost is. It's super, super important. You see, the book of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, they're what's called the synoptic gospels, meaning they're able to be seen together and from the same point of view. And so this is Luke's account of kind of where Matthew 8 is, and it's in Luke chapter 8. And this is what Jesus says in verse 4. He says, and when a great crowd was gathering and people from town after town came to him, he said in a parable, a sower went out to sow his seed, and as he sowed, some fell along the path and was trampled underfoot, and the birds of the air devoured it. And some fell on the rock, and as it grew up, it withered away, but it had no moisture. And some fell among the thorns, and the thorns grew up with it and choked it. And some fell into good soil and grew and yielded 100-fold. As he said these things, he called out, he who has ears to hear, let him hear. So here we see again, a huge crowd's gathered. Now, not just the people of the town. Now the scripture says, from town to town they gathered. So remember, there's no buses, trains, motorcycles, vehicles, Uber for these guys. They hear, hey, Jesus is going to be in that town. And so they get their stuff, they get their family, they get a community, and they walk miles and miles and miles to see Jesus, right? So he's gathered this from town to town. They walk miles and miles just to hear Jesus. So this sounds like a perfect opportunity to preach the gospel and give a powerful altar call, doesn't it? So what does Jesus do? He starts giving them a riddle. He says, this guy goes out to plant seeds, but some fell out of his bag, fell on the way, fell in the path. People walked all around, and the birds ate them. Then some seed fell on the rock. It grew for a little while, but never have water. The rock didn't hold water, so it dried up and withered and died. Then some more of the seed fell in thorns, and the thorns grew up with the seed, and it choked out the seed. The thorns are stronger. And then he says, well, some fell in good soil, and that plant grew and gave a lot of fruit. So remember now, there's tons of people there, and some of them traveled a long way to get there. Then Jesus ends his short riddle with this: if you know, you know. This is what he does. This is what Jesus does. He gathers a huge crowd. These guys are going from long ways away. He's like, here's the riddle. Good luck, guys. Figure it out. What? He did that. Can you imagine the people who traveled all the way to get to see Jesus and his teaching, this teacher of teachers? They must have been looking at you like, what the heck just happened? What is this guy talking about? Seeds and thorns, getting choked out, these seeds dying. And even the disciples, they're probably looking at each other like, here goes Jesus again, screwing up the big crowds for us. We're trying to launch our ministry, and Jesus is like giving them riddles and saying, if you know, you know. But then what happens after is the disciples come to him, right? And they ask him, hey, what does this parable mean? What was this parable? What were you saying to the large mass of people? And then you just walked away. He says, I'll tell you guys what it meant. But as for that huge crowd, I spoke to them in a parable so that they wouldn't understand. Do you know why Jesus spoke in parables? He's not to tell stories. Jesus never spoke in parables so that people would remember the stories. He was concealing truth in parables. And I believe this is how Jesus weeded people out. He had huge crowds, and he would say a riddle, and if you're not hungry enough, because Matthew 5:6, those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, you will be filled. He promises that. And he would say a riddle, and unless you're hungry enough to go get the truth, you're not getting it. And many people would leave him. Jesus would gather huge crowds, he would preach, and people would scatter. How do we know? Acts 1, at the end of, after Jesus dies, there's only 120 or so in the upper room. What happened to all the great crowds? Where's all the people who came to listen to him preach? There's not too many people who tarried and was left in the upper room. I believe he told these things and concealed truth to find the hungry. Then again in Luke 14, he says, now great crowds accompanied him. And he turned and said to them, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his own father and mother and wife and children and brothers and sisters, yes, even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. Whoever does not bear his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. For which of you desiring to build a tower does not first sit down and count the cost, whether he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, when he has laid a foundation and is not able to finish, all who see it begin to mock him, saying, this man began to build and was not able to finish. Or what king going out to encounter another king in war will not sit down first and deliberate whether he is able with 10,000 to meet him who comes against him with 20,000? And if not, while the other is yet a great way off, he sends a delegation and asks for terms of peace. So therefore, any one of you who does not renounce all that he has cannot be my disciple. So we see Jesus gather another great crowd. It's a great crowd. There's tons of people. The disciples like, Jesus screwed up. Luke 8. He told them a parable, said, if you know, you know, and he left them. Now, 6 chapters later, he gets another chance. He gathers another huge crowd. And what is Jesus' opening line? Unless you hate your father and mother. This is what I do. I laugh out loud. At home, I'm like, If you come to me and you don't hate your own father and mother, even your wife and your children, your brothers and sisters, and your own life, you cannot be my disciple. This is his opening line. There's no pleasantries with Jesus. He's just like, this guy. That's his opening line. Let me tell you what it actually means. So my friend Max, he has a church called Salt and Light. Meets at Waikiki Elementary. Good friend of mine, he just went on a mission trip to Kyrgyzstan. And he just came back, he's showing me pictures. And he shows me a picture, this is probably like 6 years ago, 7 years ago. Him and this young guy, he was probably like 13, 14 years old, with his armor on him, Muslim guy, who they preached the gospel to. And the guy never got converted, but he's like, they preach the gospel, like the gospel of the kingdom, like what it means to follow Jesus. And he goes back, so 7 years later, he just got back a month or so ago, and he shows me another picture of the same guy. The guy looks almost exactly the same, just a little older, with his armor on him, and then this guy now has a family. And so 7 years ago, or whatever it was, I think it was 6 or 7 years ago, they preached the gospel to this guy. Never made a decision to follow Jesus. Now, 7 years later, or 6 years later, the guy has dedicated his life to the Lord. But this is what it means for him. It means for him that now he's been cut off from his mother and father, his tribe, his community in Kyrgyzstan. So now he's now exiled from all the people he grew up with, everything he knew, all the comforts that he had, the community he's grown up with, family, friends, kids he grew up with. So now, because he decided to become a Christian, follow Jesus, to become a disciple, now all these guys have kicked him out of the tribe, and they have nothing to do with him. So what the scripture is saying is that this guy, 7 years ago, God preached the gospel. Max is like, this is what it means to follow Jesus. You're renouncing everything else. Your life is not your own. And he couldn't pull the trigger. He couldn't make that decision. And rightly so. He shouldn't have. Because he knew the cost of what it meant to say yes to Jesus. It means that now my mom and dad disown me. My brothers and sisters, all my friends, all my family, all my whole community want nothing to do with me now. And this guy is like, Jesus is worth it. I have to hate my father and mother, my brother and sister, my friends and family in order to follow Jesus. We just aren't put in these situations. But these situations happen all the time, all over the world, just not here right now. Right now. I believe there's a time coming, though. And this is what Jesus is saying. Unless you hate your father and mother, brothers and sisters, your own life, then you cannot be my disciple. See, all the things that Jesus does and all the things that Jesus says, bury your own father, I don't have a place to live, I don't have any place to sleep. What he's doing is, it's actually a comparison. And he's saying, compared to me, what you give up, you have to understand, is nothing in comparison to me. And we have testimony from Paul. He says, I consider everything rubbish except for knowing Christ and him crucified, right? And this is how Jesus calls disciples. This is how he makes disciples. He just tells the truth. And I'm so glad we're going through the Bible, going through the book of Matthew, because I probably wouldn't have come up with this on my own. Or maybe I would have. Who knows? But it's his words. I'm just telling them to you that this is the cost of discipleship. And so and I'm closing with this, what is the cost of being a disciple of Jesus? Like, what does that even mean? Like, what does it mean when Jesus says you have to be willing to forsake everything that you know, even hate your own life? Give up everything you have to follow me. If I had to boil it down to one simple idea, it would be Jesus asking this: do you love me the most? Like, this is what it takes. Because we don't earn salvation, right? We can't. It's impossible. We don't earn salvation. But to be a follower of Jesus and the cost of discipleship, all Jesus asks is, do you love me the most? Do you love me more than your dreams, than your aspirations? Do you love me more than your 401k? Do you love me more than your car and your house? Do you love me more than your career and your job? Do you love me more than your status? Like, this is what Jesus asks. This is what all he's saying is, do you love me the most? This is what he wants. It's the first commandment. And the second is like it. Do you love me the most is what he's asking this morning. And I don't love him the most all the time. I don't. And that's why he gives me grace. And I wake up this morning and he gives me mercy, new mercy this morning. And his grace and he shows me kindness, and then I turn back to him, and then I love him the most, and then I don't love him the most again. And he does the same thing over and over and over and over again. And I just keep returning. I just keep returning. It's what the book of Revelation, the 7 letters to 7 churches, the church of Ephesus, is just return to your first love. Do the things you did at first. Just do those things, and you're going to be okay. I see your good works. I see you hate the works of the Nicolaitans, their teaching, their idolatry, but you left your first love. Return to that all the time. Return to your first love. Do the things you did at first. And this is what Jesus asks us. Do you love me the most? This is what it requires to be his disciple. And the good news is this. He is so easy to love. He is so easy to love. You just have to know him. You just have to know. You just have to know what he's done for you. He's so easy to love. That he would lay his life down being God, taking on the form of a man to hang on a tree, something to be grasped. Like, you just have to know him. He's easy to love. And it's why it's such a high priority here at this church that we minister to the Lord and we worship him and we magnify him. He needs to be the biggest and the thing you see all the time. He needs to be the greatest. Because if you see him, you'll love him, I promise. This is why this is our priority. It's the first commandment first. Because if you'll see him, you will love him. You cannot help but love him. You just have to see him. You have to have a heart that is humble. You have to come to him. You have to meet with him. And he'll meet with you. We can have the worship team come up. Why don't we all stand to our feet?